GoForThe2.com. These are our Week 10 previews and predictions due to Hurricane Sandy. We're going to give a condensed version of both the Kansas State-Oklahoma State game, Alabama-LSU, and we're going to condense our picks all into one podcast due to the hurricane. We wish everybody the best, but it's been tough sledding the last couple of days. So we'll give you the breakdowns and the predictions for both of these games, and then we'll give you our picks for the weekend. The Thursday night game, Virginia Tech and Miami, we'll have a prediction up on the website Thursday morning, a very small commentary due to the hurricane conditions in New York and New Jersey. So just stick with us. Friday night's game, Washington and California, will have a prediction as well, but a very small commentary. Don't look for much until the weekend's over and power does get restored to the area. So let's just get right into it. Let's talk about Oklahoma State traveling to Kansas State. It's going to be a great matchup. It's an 8 o'clock start. It's on Fox Network. You have to check it out. Oklahoma State, 24th in the country. They're 5-2, 3-1 in the Big 12. They're taking on number 3 Kansas State, who's looked right now like a great top 5 team. Another dominating performance last week over Texas Tech. Colin Klein and the offense throttled the Red Raiders 55-24. That game was a little nip and tuck early. Kansas State did trail early in that matchup 7-0, but then after halftime, Colin Klein and the offense got it going, and the defense was opportunistic, creating turnovers, and that propelled the Wildcats to 8-0 with the 55-24 victory. When you look at this matchup, Oklahoma State and Kansas State, the visitor over the last 6 meetings is 1-5. So that puts a lot of pressure on Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State also, you remember last year, they won in Stillwater 52-45. A very dominating performance offensively by Brandon Whedon. He threw for 502 yards last year. That propelled Oklahoma State to the victory. He has now graduated. He's now in the NFL. It's going to fall, a lot of pressure fall on J.W. Walsh in the passing game. J.W. Walsh is a freshman. He's only made one career road start. That was against Kansas. He played mediocre in that game. He threw for 1 touchdown, threw an interception in that game. They got a very lackluster, the Cowboys did a very lackluster 20-14 victory on the road against Kansas. He's going to need to step up. Oklahoma State, though, is a very potent offensive attack. When you look at Mike Gundy, he's an offensive guru. This is a team that's averaging 44.1 points per game. They're throwing the ball very well. They're averaging 347 yards per game passing. They're also rushing it very well, 239 yards rushing. So a lot of pressure will, though, fall on the offensive line for Oklahoma State. Can they protect J.W. Walsh? To date, they've done a very good job. They've only given up 3 sacks. Walsh has only been sacked 3 times. So I think Oklahoma State can get the ball down the field vertical. A little bit different type of passing game for Oklahoma State than Texas Tech. Texas Tech likes to throw short to intermediate passes. Oklahoma State likes to stretch the ball vertical, likes to go down the seam. So that will put a lot of pressure on the Wildcat defense. They're a bend but don't break type of defense, and they're very good in the red zone. So we're going to have to see how that matches up in this ball game. When you look at the rushing attack for Oklahoma State, they're led by Joseph Randall. He can run, he can catch. He's also rushed an average of 5.6 yards per carry. He's a big reason why they're averaging 239 yards per game. He gives a lot of experience, and behind J.W. Walsh, they can get the ball to Randall on swing passes and screens and sort of spread out that Wildcat defense. So a key in this matchup will be, can Oklahoma State get the ball vertical against the defense of Kansas State? I think that they will be able to move the ball, and how they perform in the red zone will be whether they pull off the upset or not. Defensively for the Oklahoma State Cowboys, this is where they fall a little bit into trouble when you look at this matchup. They're not very opportunistic. They've only gotten 6 interceptions on the season. On top of that, they are only giving up 23.1 points per game. However, they're not opportunistic. Their turnover margin on the road is a -5. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on Oklahoma State's defense against Colin Klein. They're going to need to create turnovers, especially on the road, to get the victory. Whether they can do that or not is a key question mark. They only have 12 sacks on the season. So in order to get some pressure on Colin Klein, they're going to need to match up on the outside. They're going to have to take some chances by blitzing. They do have a very good run defense overall, only giving up 125 yards rushing per game. But then when you look at it on the road, they're giving up 184 yards. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on the Oklahoma State defense to stop Colin Klein and running back Jonathan Hubert. When you look at Kansas State, what can you say? They're methodical. They like to jump out early. A lot of ball control that forces and puts a lot of pressure on teams to get out of their game plan. If Kansas State gets up early in this ball game and then forces the hand to Oklahoma State, they can be in control of this ball game. But Kansas State is built. I know they came back last week, but they're built more by getting the lead and then maintaining it with the time of possession with Colin Klein. I mean, he's having a great season. He's completed 70.9% of his passes, but he hurts people with his legs. He's got 16 touchdowns rushing, and that's why he's a key Heisman Trophy contender at this point. When you look at Jonathan Hubert, he gives Colin Klein in the rushing attack a lot of balance. He's averaging 7.6 yards per rush, and that opens things up for the Wildcat offense. The Wildcat offensive line is very physical. They wore down Oklahoma. They're going to look to do the same to Oklahoma State. Can they do that? They've only surrendered 6 sacks on the season, so they're a very good and physical offensive line. They protect Colin Klein, and they're going to want to methodically go down the field to wear down the Oklahoma State defense. To date, nobody's been able to stop Colin Klein and that offense. The best performance in my mind, who did it the best, was Iowa State. Iowa State at home held Colin Klein. They only held him to 26 points, so 27 points. They got a 27-21 victory in Ames, but Iowa State had a very good defensive game plan in stopping the Wildcat offense. Oklahoma State is going to have to follow the same suit. Lockett's a key factor in this game. Klein likes to hit him on play action. He's been able to get deep the last couple of weeks. He has 3 touchdown passes, so you have to keep an eye out for him. Oklahoma State's defense, not very good against the pass, 235 yards per game on the road, though it's 265. So how do they fare going up against Kansas State? You know, going into this game, I think Oklahoma State feels like they can play on both sides of the ball with Kansas State, but right now they're going to have to play a lot more physical on the defensive side of the ball to create turnovers. So a key concern for Oklahoma State has to be in the secondary and the pass defense. Can they shut down the passing game off play action from Kansas State? We'll have to see. When you look at the defense for Kansas State right now, Trey Walker, the linebacker, he's out. He hurt his knee. He's out for the season. So how does that affect the Wildcat defense? They're only giving up 17.1 points per game. So they're built with bend but don't break. They're very good in the red zone. They hold teams to field goals. They did it against Oklahoma. They did it against Miami. They did it against Texas Tech. They bend. They give up a lot of yards between the 30s. But then once teams get into the red zone, they force those teams into field goals and not touchdowns. Oklahoma State's going to need to try and exploit that in order to have a shot in this bowl game. But make no mistake about it, this is the most experienced in terms of sophisticated passing attack. I think Oklahoma State has a more sophisticated passing attack than Oklahoma. They stretch the field vertical. They don't like to go sideline to sideline. They like to attack the deep thirds of the secondary. So we'll have to see how Oklahoma State does that in this ball game. When you look at Kansas State, Arthur Brown has led this defense, Tuggle as well, and Ty Zimmerman. They're very opportunistic, and they create turnovers and score off those turnovers. They're a plus 17, which is unbelievable. They're up there with Alabama when you look at the turnover margin for Kansas State. So ball security will be a big factor in this ball game. I think Kansas State will win this ball game. I think it'll just be a touchdown type of game, just because I think Oklahoma State State will be able to exploit the secondary and get touchdowns. They'll be in the game. I think a concern for Oklahoma State, though, is that secondary giving up a lot of passing yards and the turnover margin, not very opportunistic. In order to get the upset victory, they're going to have to force Colin Klein and the Wildcat offense into turnovers. I don't see it. I think Kansas State gets a 7-point victory. I think it's very low scoring in terms of what you would call for a Big 12 game. I think Kansas State gets a 27-20 victory at home to move to 9-0. I think Oklahoma State can't get the ball vertical, but I think their defense isn't up to par yet, and I think Kansas State gets a 7-point victory at home in Manhattan to move to 9-0. So Kansas State gets a very close victory over Oklahoma State. When you look at the showdown in Baton Rouge, number 1 Alabama, number 6, number 5, depending on which poll you look, number 5 LSU. This is a showdown in Baton Rouge. This is going to be a great matchup. All eyes are on both defenses, but it's the offenses that are basically making some noise. Alabama scoring at will with A.J. McCarron. He, in my estimation, is my Heisman frontrunner. He had a great game again last week in the dismantling of Mississippi State at home. They have shown no signs of looking ahead to this ball game. Nick Saban and his ball club have been very disciplined, and they're very primed and ready for this matchup against LSU. They want to prove that they are the number 1 team in the nation, and right now you can't even argue against them. When you look at LSU, though, they do have a 22 home game winning streak. So if you're an LSU fan, you want to play Alabama at home at night. It's on CBS. It's an 8 o'clock start. It's going to be a great matchup. LSU's defense matches up very well against the offensive line of Alabama. Can Alabama wear down LSU the way they have everyone else? Alabama loves to wear down teams and then work off a play action. A.J. McCarron, he's having a great year. He's thrown 18 touchdowns, no interceptions. The running backs of Lacey and Yelton, they have been able to run at will on teams. Both backs with 7 touchdowns each. Amari Cooper, Kenny Bell have been able to spread the defense, and McCarron's been able to work off play action and make consistent throws down the field. How he does this against LSU will be a key factor in this ball game. If you're an Alabama fan, you want to be able to run the football against the LSU defense, then work off play action with McCarron and use that heavy offensive line to wear down the Tigers the way Florida did in their matchup a few weeks ago. Can Alabama do it? There's no reason not to think so. Nick Saban's the best coach in the country. He's the national champion. You have to give him his credit and his props. That's why Alabama is disciplined and is methodical and businesslike week in and week out. When you look at LSU, though, they do have an advantage in this ball game by having an extra week, both offensively and defensively, to prepare for this ball game. Les Miles has been able to defeat Nick Saban better than any other coach over the last 3 years. He's had Nick Saban's number during the regular season. It's been in national championships, especially last year, where Les Miles hasn't been up to par against Nick Saban. But he has 2 national championships as well, Les Miles does. So these are 2 top-notch coaches. You're giving LSU, and not only LSU's offense, but LSU's defense and their defensive coordinator, John Chavis, an extra week to prepare for this ball game, and that's going to be a key factor in this game. What can LSU do differently? What can they come up with? Any new wrinkles in this ball game, both offensively in the vertical passing game and defensively, to get some pressure on A.J. McCarron? That's going to be the key factor for LSU. Can LSU and the defensive ends, Barkevius Mingo and Sam Montgomery, get pressure on McCarron? McCarron's been sacked a lot of times. The Alabama offensive line has allowed 16 sacks with McCarron. So can LSU generate enough pressure on the outside by playing man coverage and then force some blitzes and allow Barkevius Mingo and Montgomery to get pressure on the edge and force McCarron into mistakes? It's going to be a tough task, but if any team could do it in the country, it is the LSU Tigers. When you look at the strength of LSU, they like to run the football. They have great backs, Spencer Ware, Kenny Hilliard, Jeremy Hill, and Michael Ford are as good as anybody in the country. They have a very good offensive line, but they're very young and inexperienced due to some injuries. So how does the offensive game plan for LSU fare? They're going to want to run the football, but they're going up against the number one rated rushing defense in Alabama and the number one rated scoring defense in Alabama. So they're going to need to throw on first and second down. They're going to need to break some tendencies. They're going to need to get the ball in the flat to both Hilliard, Spencer Ware, and Ford to spread out the Alabama defense. If they can do that, that will open up the passing game. That will also open up the running game later in that ball game the way LSU did it against South Carolina. This game is a toss-up. When you look at both teams with great defenses. LSU ranked 9th in the country. They're only surrendering 14 points per game. They're as good as Alabama, and they're just as physical. This is Alabama's arch nemesis when you look at it in the SEC. Both teams are evenly matched on defense. If there is a difference between the two, it's been the pleasant surprise of the Alabama offense and how many points they're generating. LSU's more methodical. They're more ugly. They like to ground it out, and Zach Mettenberger hasn't performed to date. He's very subpar, 7 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, but it's been in the big games against Auburn. He didn't have a very good game in the 12-10 victory on the road against Texas A&M. He stepped it up a notch. He didn't turn the ball over, and that's a key component going into this ball game with Alabama. Do not turn the ball over for LSU, and they will have an opportunity to pull off the upset. If there is a cause of concern for Alabama, I mean, if you can pick something, it has to be in the kicking game. They gave up a lot of return yards in the kicking game to Mississippi State. They're giving up 26 yards on returns on the road. So that's a key component in this game in terms of field position. When you look at the kicking game as well, Cade Foster struggled. He was only 4 of 8 on field goal attempts. So how you remember last year, the kicking game was a key component in the LSU victory. So it could come down to the kickers in this ball game as well. Advantage at this point. Smelly's been perfect on field goals. He's 9 of 9. Cade Foster 4 of 8 on long distance, and the kickoff returns over the last couple of weeks for Alabama has been a little suspect. But other than that, they've been flawless. I think this game will come down to whoever controls the ball and does not turn it over. Alabama fans hate me, so I might as well just go with the upset anyway. I'm calling for a 17-14 LSU victory. I think the extra week to prepare for this ball game, not only to heal from injuries, but also to prepare for a game plan to add a different wrinkle for Alabama, will be to LSU's benefit. And I'm calling for the 17-14 LSU victory at home to pull the win streak to 23 games. I'm going to have the picks coming up in the next video, so check it out. Sorry for the small commentary this week, but it's due to the hurricane. Check us out at goforthe2.com. We'll have all the predictions up on Thursday morning, and the podcast will be up a little bit later today. So stay with us at goforthe2.com.